things that we're not allowed to do today. For example, they used to talk to each other, talk outside of prayer in the middle of prayer. Someone would come late to the prayer, he'd say, Salamu alaikum, they'd say, Wa alaikum assalam. He'd say, what rak'ah are you in? They would say, we're in the second rak'ah. He'd say, okay, and then he would join, right? And so they do these kind of things until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed, even that we don't do anymore, right? And so it kind of came, the restrictions came a bit gradually at first, until the prayer took its full form, the way we do it today. So number one, if any of the pillars or the obligatory acts, how many of you were here last week in the class? How many were here last week by a show of hands? Only a couple. Most of you were not here. So in that class, they did the breakdown of what parts of prayer are obligatory, what parts are, what parts are pillars and what parts are obligatory, and what parts are voluntary. Because different movements and sayings in the prayer can be broken down in different ways. They're not all equal. Some parts of the prayer are more important than others. Some are voluntary, meaning if you missed it, you're not necessarily going to be sinful for missing that, right? And when you miss certain parts, you have to do, for example, the sajdatain of forgetfulness, the prostrations of forgetfulness. So those of you who missed the class, please watch it back from last week. I think Sheikh Hussein was here covering that, alhamdulillah. Okay? So here it says, if any of its pillars or obligatory acts, what we call arkan, rukun, or wajibat, right? Wajib, are intentionally or forgetfully omitted despite one's ability. So if you intentionally leave that out, your prayer becomes what? Invalidated. You cannot on purpose forget to, choose not to read Surah Al-Fatiha, for example. It's a must. If you don't read it, the prayer is incomplete. If it's incomplete, it becomes invalid, right? And it says here, forgetfully. Now, you learned in last week's class, if you do forget, you have a chance to correct the prayer. You have to add it back in, right? If you forgot it, depending on when you forgot it and what you forgot, there are some details to that. But you'd have to add it back in for the prayer to be complete, quote unquote, right? And then you would add on the prostrations of forgetfulness at the end if you forgot to do an important part of the prayer. But if you finished your prayer, you walked away, and then you're like, oh no, I left out this thing and that thing which were essential part of the prayer, then your prayer is invalid, it's incomplete, right? And you have to correct it if you still can. Number two, if any of its obligatory acts are intentionally left out, which we just said in number one, obligatory acts are intentionally left out. Okay? Now you notice in number one, they said despite one's ability. Because if you have a disability, then you may be exempt. For example, you should say Allahu Akbar while you're standing. But if you're in a wheelchair, you can't stand, then you're free from the obligation to stand, for example, right? So there are some things that you might not be able to do, then you're exempt from having to do it, obviously. Number three, deliberately speaking while in the prayer. So if you're having some conversation or talking outside of the actual words that you say in the prayer, like if you read Surah Al-Fatiha out loud in the prayer as part of the prayer, no problem. But you speak to somebody, you have a conversation with your spouse or your kids, for example, you can't do that in the middle of the prayer. Number four, laughing out loud. So, you hear a joke, your kids are watching the TV nearby and you think it's funny and you start laughing. No, this breaks the prayer. The prayer is a very solemn act. It's a very serious act. And so you're supposed to be in full focus, and laughing is showing that you've basically broken out of the prayer. You are just kind of like in another world and you're not really focused on Allah and what you are doing. Number five, unnecessary continuous movements. What defines that? Scholars may differ. But if you just do too many movements, right? Can I start, for example, just walking around in the middle of the prayer or doing all these kind of movements, and I decide I'm going to organize the room, the things are near me, I'm just going to reshuffle them all and so on while I'm in the middle of the prayer? No, this would invalidate the prayer. If I need to do a little bit of movement, right? I'm here and then I feel this thing is really itching me, or there's a fly here and I shoo it away. Is that okay? That would be fine, right? But if you're doing too much movement, the ideal thing would be that you don't move at all. When they described some of the righteous people when they pray, they said as if he was a rod, as if he was just a stick. He wouldn't even flinch, he wouldn't move an inch. Because they said movement is a sign of what's going on in the head. And so if you're fidgeting and moving a lot, it means your brain is not relaxed, it's not calm, it's not focusing. It's all over the place. And so that's not a good sign, right? So too much fidgeting and moving, adjusting your clothes, scratching yourself, this one, that one, doing this in the middle of the prayer, it could lead to the level of invalidating the prayer if you're doing it too much. Acts which are disliked during the prayer. These are the acts which are bound to decrease the reward for one's prayer and negatively affect humility, concentration, and attentiveness, but they don't necessarily reach to the level of invalidating the prayer, right? But you want to avoid them as much as you can. Number one, turning the head around during the prayer. And this one, there's even some difference of opinion among scholars about it. Would it invalidate the prayer or not? The Prophet ﷺ says, it is a way of stealing by which shaitan takes away a portion from a person's prayer, right? So are you supposed to look around while you're praying? You're like, seeing what's the guy over here doing and who just walked in the mosque and so on. No, you're supposed to really be focused. And that's why our scholars have said the best place to look during the prayer is look at the place of prostration. Look at the place where you put your forehead in sujood, because you're less likely to be distracted. Right? And you're not supposed to turn your head or your body or look up like this and so on, right? So you want to be in a really focused state, and that whole glancing around or looking around is going to ruin the rewards of your prayer. Number two, fiddling with one's hands or face, placing one's hands on their hips, clasping one's hands together, cracking one's fingers. So these are all positions and movements that have been discouraged by the Prophet ﷺ, actually, right? Some of them explicitly mentioned and some of them not so explicitly. But in general, right, it's disrespectful. Imagine you're standing before a king and the king is talking and you start going, let me just crack my knuckles now. And it's like as if you're not interested in your meeting with him, you're bored or you don't have much respect for him. It gives off this vibe of, respect the place, respect the thing, the position. What are you doing right now? You're standing before the king, right? And so imagine now you're before the King of Kings, Allah. Is it a time where you just put your hands on your hips and then you're cracking your knuckles and you're fidgeting with your clothes and doing, no. Whatever you feel you want to do it before the prayer. Once you come into the prayer, this is focus time for a short time. Problem is we all have ADD, right? We all have attention deficit disorder where we can barely focus. But these 5-10 minutes, try to really focus. And one way to focus is not to move around too much, not to be thinking about things too much oh, this one's itching me or this is uncomfortable. Ignore all that stuff. You have more important things to think about. Number three, engaging in prayer when one is distracted by something. Like what? Like you're hungry and you feel like you need to eat, or you need to answer the call of nature. You need to use the toilet, right? So the Prophet ﷺ explicitly said, don't pray when you're in that state. Because what happens? Then you're just thinking about what you need to do. Oh, I'm so hungry. Can't wait for this prayer to be over so I can go eat dinner, right? So if the dinner is ready and the food's on the table, eat first. Eat first, and then come and do the prayer comfortably with full concentration, not being distracted. You need to use the toilet? Use the toilet. You can even cut the prayer and leave it to go use the toilet when you really need to use it badly, right? So here it says, no prayer can be correctly offered when the food is served before the worshiper or when one is prompted by the call of nature, right? You need to pee or poo or you need to pass wind and so on. You have to make yourself comfortable. Otherwise, you're doing the prayer and you're fully distracted because you're so uncomfortable. Make sense? Okay, so these are things that would invalidate the prayer or that would reduce some reward of the prayer because it's taking away of some internal or external aspect of the prayer. What do we mean by internal aspect of the prayer? What does internal aspect of the prayer mean? Khushu'a, we call it in Arabic, right? The concentration. You really want to have a feeling when you're praying, right? I'm thinking about Allah. I'm feeling humbled. I'm feeling awe and respect. I'm feeling reverence, right? It's hard to do that when you really need to use the toilet or when you're distracted by this thing or that thing and so on. Okay, next we go to the voluntary prayers. So the 5 daily prayers are the only mandatory prayers in Islam as mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ. The 5 daily prayers are the must. Every Muslim should do them. Should, as a Muslim, I only stick to those though and not do anything beyond that? The scholars have said, no, that's not really a safe approach. Why? Because our 5 daily prayers are probably not going to be perfect. And so what's going to happen is on the day of judgment, when you come and you face Allah, first thing He's going to judge is your prayer. And so He's going to look at your prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ, in one scary hadith, he says, he said that Allah may accept from you a tenth of your prayer, a ninth of your prayer, 1/8 of your prayer, 1/7 of your prayer, 1/6 of your prayer, 1/5 of your prayer, 1/4 of your prayer, 1/3 of your prayer, and then he said 1/2 of your prayer, and he stopped there. He didn't go any higher than that. He didn't say 2/3, 3/4. He just said 1/2. He said, or for some people, it'll be taken like a wet cloth and thrown back in their face. Because it was so like disrespectful. The whole prayer you did, you were just moving, thinking about other things. Like the whole prayer didn't count. Because the only part of the prayer that counts is the part you were concentrating in. It's not only about the physical movements, it's also about the psychological, mental part, what was going on. Were you thinking about the words you're saying and what they mean? Were you thinking about Allah? Were you focused and concentrating in that way? Or you were thinking about like errands you need to do and bills you need to pay and the kids you need to pick up from school and so on, right? So you really got to focus. And so we're not that good at focusing. So the Prophet ﷺ said, good chance that only half your prayer is accepted. Like you prayed for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, only half of that time was valid. And Allah will give you half the reward. So what happens for the other parts? Now you're going to be sinful because you owed Allah a full perfect prayer. But what's the first thing we do after we finish prayer? We say, Astaghfirullah, oh Allah, forgive me. But you just did a really good deed. Why are you asking Allah for forgiveness? Because you know the good deed was lacking in quality. It wasn't good enough. Allah deserves better. And so the scholars have said, Allah will tell the angels for the prayers he did late or he missed or this one and that one, take from his voluntary prayers to fill in the gaps. Take from his voluntary prayers. So if you did lots of voluntary prayers, it means what? You're going to be in good shape because you have hundreds of prayers that you've done. And so the angels can choose from all that to fill in all the problematic spots that you have here. But if you have nothing beyond the 5 daily prayers, you better ensure your 5 daily prayers are perfect. You never did a single one late, you never missed anyone, and you made sure you were fully concentrating in all of them from beginning to end, right? That's not easy. And so that's why to create a buffer to be safe, you should do more, you should do extra. And so the Prophet ﷺ also showed us that the voluntary deeds are the ones that Allah really loves. And as a result of them, Allah loves you very much. So he said, for example, there's no way to get closer to Allah through anything more beloved to Him than the mandatory actions. He loves mandatory actions most. That's why He made them mandatory, obviously, right? So the good deeds that you get rewarded for and you get punished if you don't do, like the 5 daily prayers, that's the best thing you can do. But then the Prophet ﷺ says you continue to get closer and closer to Allah by doing the voluntary good deeds till you reach a point where Allah loves you. And if Allah loves you, forget about it. Then He becomes the eyes with which you see, He becomes the ears with which you hear, He's guiding you, He's helping you, He's protecting you in your life. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if you call on Him, He will answer your call. He will never let you down once you reach that level. But how to reach that level? They said by doing the voluntary actions, because the voluntary action is done purely out of what? It's done out of sincerity. Even the mandatory actions must be done sincerely. But the mandatory actions, sometimes you might do it out of fear because you're afraid of being punished. With the voluntary actions, are you afraid of being punished? No. You're doing it out of love because it's voluntary. You don't have to do it, right? So like a husband or a wife, for example. The husband might say, I paid the rent. What do you want from me? But this is the minimum. The minimum is you paid the rent and you gave her food and you gave her clothes. This is your duty as a husband, right? But when you buy her a gift, is she more excited about the rent or the gift? She's more excited about the gift, even though the gift is maybe a tenth of the value of the rent that you just paid. But the rent is like, this is what you must do. This is the minimum. It's obligation, right? Otherwise, you're a neglectful husband. They'll take you to court. But when you're giving that gift, you're giving this fully out of, I care about you, I thought about you, I love you, and I went and I bought you this thing because I love you. And that means a lot to a person, right? Because it's purely done out of love. And for Allah is the highest of examples, but Allah loves the thing which you came and you did it out of love. You did it not because someone is holding a gun to your head and forcing you to do it. You did it because you want to do it, right? So these are the voluntary actions, like the voluntary prayers. Muslims are required to offer 5 daily prayers or 5 prayers a day. However, Islam encourages them to offer other recommended prayers. For doing so makes them worthy of Allah's love and serve to make up for any deficiencies in the performance of the obligatory prayers. The following are some of the important supererogatory prayers. What does supererogatory mean? It's a fancy word for voluntary. It just means extra, right? Beyond the minimum that you have to do. So the supererogatory prayers accompanying the obligatory prayers, we call these in Arabic sunan al-rawatib. So these are the sunnah prayers the Prophet ﷺ used to do very regularly. And they are attached with the 5 daily prayers. You do them right before or you do them right after, usually, those prayers, right? These are the prayers that are offered before or after the obligatory prayers, and Muslims generally do not neglect them. So this is the minimum you want to try to start with, right? If you're not doing any sunnahs, what's the first sunnah you should add to your life? Add witr prayer and add 2 rak'ahs sunnah before fajr. You're doing those regularly, then increase more to these other sunnahs. What's the maximum number of sunnah the Prophet ﷺ usually would do for his 5 daily prayers? He was doing 12 rak'ahs usually a day, right? There were some occasional ones he would do here and there. Regarding the reward for performing these prayers, if you do these 12 rak'ahs related to the 5 daily prayers. 5 daily prayers is how many rak'ahs? 17. 12 rak'ahs plus 17 is 29. You didn't know it's a math class also, huh? So 29, how many rak'ahs is that? I mean, some of our scholars, they said minimum every day they prayed 100 rak'ahs a day, 200 rak'ahs a day, 300 rak'ahs a day. Imam Ahmad's son said he used to pray at least 200 rak'ahs a day. Then after he got beaten in jail and he was injured and he became like less energetic, he would do only 100 rak'ahs a day, only. What's the day you ever prayed 100 rak'ahs in a day? Right? We cannot even stick to the 29. We found it's like too much, 29. Subhanallah, amazing. And these are people who, they had a lot of free time. Imam Ahmad collected a collection of 30,000 plus hadith. He knew 1,000,000 hadith. He memorized 1,000,000 chains of narration. It's insane. You know how much time and effort that takes? He said, I traveled around the whole world twice to compile my collection of hadith. And yet he had time to pray 100 rak'ahs a day, minimum. Subhanallah. And then one of us says, I can't do 5 daily prayers, 17 rak'ahs is too much. It's definitely not too much, but you got to put the will and you got to put the effort to try to do it. So what do you get if you add these 12 rak'ahs? The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will build a house in paradise. What's the house in paradise going to be? Like a house in Jalan Ampang or Mount Kiara? It's going to be a huge palace and mansion. It's unimaginable. The Prophet ﷺ said the tent in paradise, which is a hollowed out pearl, there will be one person in one part of it and another person in the other part. They can't see each other because of how big it is, because it's so huge. They won't be able to see each other. That's just a tent, right? That's the size of the tent. What is the mansion or the palace or the house going to look like? Allah will build a house in paradise for any Muslim who prays 12 units of voluntary prayer during the night and day. Some scholars said you get one house for every day you do it. But the majority said no, it means you have to be committed in doing it, and you did it very regularly. The only time you would miss it is like if you were sick or you were traveling. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah rewards you for the prayers you used to do regularly, even when you miss them because of sickness or travel, right? And even for the voluntary fasting as well. Allah will reward you as if you did it. So what are those 12 rak'ahs? 2 rak'ahs before fajr, right? How many rak'ahs before dhuhr? 4 rak'ahs before dhuhr, done as 2 and 2, 2 separate prayers. And then how many rak'ahs after dhuhr? 2 rak'ahs. So that's how many now? If we're doing our math lesson, 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 2 is 8. And then what are the remaining 4? 2 rak'ahs after maghrib. And then 2 rak'ahs after isha. So the biggest one is dhuhr. And dhuhr, you notice, comes after a long gap. From Fajr to Dhuhr is a long time. You're talking about good 6-7 hours we didn't do anything, unless you prayed Duha, right? So when you come for Dhuhr, you do 4 rak'ahs before Dhuhr. You do 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr, then you do 2 rak'ahs after. You do 10 rak'ahs in total, right? And so that's that midday. Just take a break from all the money and the work and the chasing and the farming and the whatever you were doing and pray to Allah for a good 20-30 minutes, right? And then Asr, there's no sunnah that's attached on a regular basis. And then there's 2 rak'ahs after Maghrib, 2 rak'ahs after Isha. So these are the 12 rak'ahs of Sunnah the Prophet ﷺ used to do very, very regularly. Next we come to witr prayer. What's witr prayer? Huh? What does the word witr mean? It means an odd number. And so witr, the Prophet ﷺ loved to always end his day and his night with witr. And so the day is ended with the witr of which prayer? Maghrib. Maghrib is 3 units. Notice? So you're ending the day with Maghrib prayer, which is an odd number. Why does Allah love odd numbers? Because He's one. And so doing this odd numbered units reminds you of His oneness. And so Maghrib is a witr that you end the day with, and then the witr of the night is the one that you should do right at the end of the night before Fajr preferably, right? And so that is a voluntary. Maghrib is a mandatory prayer, but witr is a voluntary prayer, although some scholars said it reaches almost to the level of obligatory. It's a emphasized sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ used to do all the time, even when he was traveling, he wouldn't leave it. And how is witr prayer done? How many units should you pray? You can do 1, you could do 3, you could do 5. It's an odd number. Minimum is 1, right? So if nobody's doing it now, they can start by just doing 1 unit. It takes 1 or 2 minutes to do it. It's easy. When can you do it? What's the time that you can pray witr technically? Huh? You can pray at any time after Isha until Fajr. You have that whole window to pray it. So if a person says, I'm not that good at getting up too early before Fajr, what do? Pray it right after Isha prayer, pray your sunnah for Isha, pray your witr, go to sleep, no problem. Right? If you get up early and you want to pray qiyam, what should you do if you already prayed witr? Can you pray qiyam after witr? Can you pray the night prayers after you already prayed witr? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Should you pray witr again after your qiyam? No. The Prophet ﷺ said no 2 witrs in one night, not allowed. Right? So you can pray qiyam after witr. Some of the Sahaba used to pray their witr right after Isha before they slept. And some of them used to pray it in the morning before the Fajr time, right? Why would somebody pray it before they slept? Just in case. They felt worried. What if I oversleep and I miss it? I don't want to miss it. Did that mean those people never got up and prayed Qiyam al-Layl? Of course not. They did. They got up and they prayed Qiyam, right? And so you can pray Qiyam after witr, but it's not the preferred way. The preferred way is witr is the final prayer of the night. Okay? And so you pray the witr right before the Fajr. I know we're using a lot of words here, a lot of Arabic words. It might be confusing for some people. Anyone feel confused? Talking about a lot of different types of prayers and so on, right? It's a bit advanced. But for some people, they're understanding it. And so for those that don't understand, feel free to ask and I can explain a little bit further. Okay? And so these are all voluntary prayers. For the one who doesn't pray the mandatory prayers, should you worry about all these voluntary prayers? Not yet, no. Focus on the mandatory prayers for now. If you're still unable to do those, focus on that. Don't overwhelm yourself with this, right? Focus on praying 5 times a day. If you say, I just can't do 5, I've tried and I can't do it, start with whatever number you can. Do something. Don't say every day goes by and I do nothing. No. Pray 2-3 times a day and do your best until you reach the point of 5, and you should be able to do it. The problem is sometimes we just make excuses for ourselves. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, I'm too lazy. Oh, I'm too weak. Oh, I'm too this. Oh, I'm too that. No, you can do it. Allah hasn't asked you to do something which is impossible to do. Okay? So here it says witr prayer. The Arabic word witr means odd number and refers to odd numbered prayer offered after the Isha prayer. Isha being the last prayer of the nighttime. It is considered to be one of the best and most meritorious of all the supererogatory prayers. The Prophet ﷺ once commanded the Muslims saying, followers of the Quran perform the witr prayer. Right? If you are a people of the Quran, he's commanding, perform the witr prayer. That's why some scholars said it's almost like it's an obligation, right? But we would say it's not an obligation, it's an emphasized sunnah. The best time to offer the witr prayer is in the latter part of the night before the Fajr prayer. But a Muslim may perform it at any time between the Isha and the Fajr prayers. The minimum number of units for the witr prayer is 1, but it's better to offer 3. A Muslim may offer more if he wishes, but the maximum number of units which the Prophet ﷺ used to perform was 11. In one night, he would pray 11 rak'ahs of voluntary prayers max. The units of the supererogatory prayers are generally offered 2 by 2, which means when you want to do 11 rak'ahs, how would you do it? 2, then 2, then 2, then 2, then 2. 5 prayers of 2 units, and then 1 at the end. Or sometimes he would do the last 3 as 1 prayer combined. Right? The witr prayer is an exception. However, if a Muslim wants to conclude his prayer, he must add one single unit during which he may recite a special supplication known as qunut supplication. This supplication is recited after rising from the bowing position and before prostrating. The position of the Shafi'i madhab, which we follow in Malaysia for the most part, is that qunut is only done in the second half of Ramadan. And that seems to be a strong opinion which the Sahaba used to follow, which is that qunut is not necessarily done all year round in the witr, but it's done in the witr only in the second half of Ramadan. This supplication is recited after rising from the bowing position and before prostrating. After this supplication, we may pray to Allah and ask Him for whatever He wishes, holding His hands in front of Him with both palms up. This is where you see people doing this, right? Making dua in the qunut time. Okay? Any questions, any comments about supererogatory prayers? There are other types of voluntary prayers, but we're not going to go into all of them. It would be too advanced. But that's the thing that someone should start with, which is the prayers that are attached to the 5 daily prayers, right before or right after. The minimum you want to do is the 2 rak'ahs before Fajr. If you have the stamina to do that, please do it, right? And the other one is the witr. That is, at least pray 1 unit, preferably even do 3 units of prayer, and that can be done right after Isha or any time throughout the night up until before the Fajr time begins. Okay? We'll stop there. Next time we can talk about times when it's preferred not to pray. There are a few times of the day where you should not be doing prayers. And then we'll talk about the importance of congregational prayer, to pray in a jama'ah, to pray in a group. Okay, any questions, any comments about that? We have a question in the back. We have a microphone. Any question online? There is one question? Okay. Okay, we'll come back to it after our sister's question here, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustaz.
Wa alaikum assalam wa
I just have
rahmatullahi.
2 thoughts for you to help me clarify.
Okay.
First, you said we have that 4 rakah before the 4 rakah. Did you just say that we need to break it to 2 by 2, or
Yes.
we can just pray 4 rakah at once?
It should be done 2 by 2.
2 by 2.
That's how the Prophet ﷺ usually would do it, yeah. So all of his voluntary prayers were mainly done 2 by 2, except for witr. Sometimes he would do it combined, like 3 or 5. He would do them in one shot without any tashahud in between.
So for witr, for example, if I want to pray 5 rakahs, and I would pray 5 rakahs all at once and no tashahud in between.
That's allowed. Or you can break it up. Even with the 3, you can do it 3 in one shot, or you can do 2, make taslim, and then 1. Like here in Malaysia, they'll usually announce in the Taraweeh what they're going to do. Right?
Yeah,
They'll say, Tiga rak'ah, do a salam. They'll say 3 units, 2 salams. So what they mean is after the 2, we're going to make salam, then we're going to get up, do 1, and make salam. But it's all like we're praying these 3 units as witr prayer.
So both cases are allowed.
Both are allowed, because the Prophet ﷺ did both.
Because I remember in last time in Ramadan here in Al-Khaadem,
Yeah.
when we pray witr prayer,
3 in one shot.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
they
do
would
one
do
shot.
4, 4, and 3.
so you in one shot, but in the witr
Yeah.
prayer they don't
So
break
3,
it.
3 in one shot or 3 broken up, both are allowed.
Okay.
Both are allowed. 4, 4 is not very common. It's not very common, but it's an interpretation by some of the scholars of hadith of the description of Aisha radhiyallahu anha of the Prophet ﷺ's prayer. But most scholars, they take into account the other hadith, which says that the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ, or the Prophet ﷺ said the prayer of a person in their night prayer is 2 by 2. Is 2, 2. And he didn't give a limit to it. So many scholars said you can pray as many units as you want. Let's say you want to do 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100. You can do as many as you want. But the Prophet ﷺ, his practice was the moderate way. He would do 11. He didn't go beyond that number. But what he would do when he wants to extend, he would make the 11 long. So he might pray 11 for the whole night, or half the night, or a third of the night, depending on how much he wants to read. And so he would read a lot of Quran in each rak'ah, making a rak'ah take half an hour, for example, or 1 hour, right? So his 11 could be very heavy 11 units, not just light 11 units. Meaning 11, you could pray it in 20 minutes, or you could pray it in 2 hours. Depends on how much you want to read in the Quran. Right? Okay? Any other questions? We had one online.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustaz.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So here we have two questions from the same person. The first one being, if one is too tired for witr prayer and intended to do it when he wakes up for tahajjud,
Yeah.
he overslept and woke up 10 minutes before fajr.
Yeah.
Should he perform tahajjud or witr? Which is better?
So he wakes up 10 minutes before Fajr, is that what you said?
10 minutes before fajr, yes.
10 minutes before Fajr. So in the 10 minutes, yeah, it's a little bit hard to do tahajjud because you don't have much time, right? If you're going to need to make wudu and something like that, you're going to have only a few minutes left. So you would just try to get your witr prayer in is what I would recommend. And witr is part of your tahajjud, right? Your tahajjud, when you're doing 11 rak'ahs, the witr is part of that whole prayer. And so you just squeeze in as much as you can. And so the last part is that important witr part. So I would say you go for your witr. If you can squeeze in 2 plus 1, meaning pray the 3 rak'ahs within 5-10 minutes, then do that. If not, then just do the one. Inshallah. And the Prophet ﷺ used to recommend that the one who prayed night prayer regularly and then missed it, make it up. Because that's what he would do. So he might, due to sickness or exhaustion, miss a night prayer. And for him, night prayer was obligatory. For all the Muslims, it was obligatory to do the night prayer for 1 year. And then it was made optional. But that helped toughen up and strengthen up. Because doing the night prayer regular makes you very disciplined and self-controlled kind of person. And so the Prophet ﷺ was obligatory for him continuously for the rest of his life, right? And so when he missed it at night, he would make it up in which time? Which time would he make it up? In the duha time, right? Which is after the sun rises, before the dhuhr. In that daytime there, he would make it up. So he would not pray an odd number though, because the odd number should be done at night. He would pray 12 instead. Right? He would make up for what he had missed. And so it is allowed to make up sunnah prayers that you miss, that you usually do regularly. Is that it?
Another question.
Another question, sure.
What time exactly does Isha prayer end?
What time does Isha prayer end? There's some difference of opinion among scholars. And so some have said you can go all the way up till Fajr. But there is a mention from the Prophet ﷺ of the middle of the night. And how do you calculate the middle of the night? You would look at your Maghrib time and you would go from Maghrib to Fajr. And so that's your night. So now Maghrib is, let's say, at 7:15 maybe. And Fajr is at almost 6 a.m. So you have about 7 to 6. So you have about 11 hours. So 5.5 hours would be the middle of the night. So you add 5.5 hours to 7:15, you get about 12:45. So 12:45 is like middle of the night. So scholars have said you should pray before that time, Isha. And if you're going to go beyond that, it should be for some valid reason, if there's a need to do it. Otherwise, do it before the middle of the night, right? So in general, a Muslim should already be sleeping after Isha anyways. So the idea would be pray your Isha early. The Prophet ﷺ didn't pray it too early. Sometimes he would delay by let's say half an hour, but not delaying necessarily by hours and hours. But he would delay to the point that the Sahaba would fall asleep in their place, waiting for him to come for Isha prayer. He wouldn't always pray it right at the beginning of the time, right? But you don't necessarily need to delay it till 11, 12, 1 a.m. and so on, unless there's some real need to do that. Allah knows best. Okay. More?
We have a final question here.
Okay, sure.
Do we apply the same voluntary prayers during Jum'ah as for Zuhr?
Okay, do we apply the same voluntary prayers for Jum'ah? It seems like no, we don't. There's a mention from the Prophet ﷺ of when you come to the mosque, if you come even very early, the Sahaba would go early morning. They wouldn't go necessarily right before Jum'ah time. They might go hours before. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, pray whatever Allah has written for you to pray. So you can pray 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. The sunnah is not really to have lectures before Jum'ah. The sunnah is for the people that are there to pray and to maybe read Quran, like read Surah Al-Kahf and so on. And so you can pray as much sunnah as you want prior to the dhuhr. There's no set, prior to the Jum'ah, there's no set amount like you would have for dhuhr prayer. After the Jum'ah, there's some difference of opinion about whether there's a sunnah or not, but there is mention of the Prophet ﷺ praying sunnah, and he would pray it as 4 rak'ahs in the mosque, or he prayed it as 2 rak'ahs when he got back home. So you can pray 4 rak'ahs, 2 and 2 at the mosque after Jum'ah, or he prayed it 2 back home. Is it better in general to pray sunnah in the mosque or at home? at home. The Prophet ﷺ recommended sunnah to be at home. Why? I thought the mosque is a good place to pray. Why would we pray our sunnah at home? What was the reason he gave? He said, don't leave your house like a grave. What's a grave? A grave is a place in which there's no prayers, nothing's happening, right? You're dead, you died, and there's no worship there. So the Prophet ﷺ said, keep your house alive. So what does prayer in your house do? Your kids see you praying. They know how good prayer is. They learn how to pray from watching you and copying you, right? When I'll do my prayer in my house, my little twins will come and try to stand next to me, and they're playing. They're like 3, 4 years old, but they're getting into that environment of, oh, Baba prays. Prayer is important. If I pray always at the mosque, they never see it. They don't know anything about it, maybe, right? So praying in the house is very good because it encourages the family. It also is going to bring the blessings of prayers being done in your home. Right? The angels love the prayers, the devils hate the prayers, right? So you want your house to be a place where Quran is recited, dua is made, dhikr is made, salah is being done. Your house should not just be a place where people are watching TV or listening to music and doing all this nonsense, right? Allah knows best. Did I answer the question? I forgot what the question was. I have a problem. I can just go off into tangents. Okay, any other question? We end there? Where's our brother Ruben that was going to do is he still around? Okay, we'll end there inshallah. And then for those that want to attend, I think it's going to be public. Is it going to be public or private? Huh? Okay. But you don't know if it's private or public? Meaning maybe the audience is not necessarily invited, yeah? So, okay, we'll have Dhuhr prayer, and then those who are still around when we're time for the conversion, if it's public and open, then you're welcome to attend. If not, then you make dua for him, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.